The rivers in China are home to one of the largest salamanders, nay, one of the largest amphibians in the entire world. Blending in with the rocks that line the riverbeds, the Chinese giant salamander spends its entire life beneath the rushing waters. This long-lived wriggle monster can breathe, see, and even heal itself using nothing but its unique skin. It just goes to show that skincare can sometimes be a matter of life, death, and taxonomy.
Welcome back to Life, Death, and Taxonomy. It's your 30 minutes of interesting animal information. I'm Joe.
And I'm Carlos.
Thank you to Cassie for the creation of our theme song. To hear more of Cassie's music, please search Cassie Michelle on YouTube or Spotify.
And thank you to Johanna for the creation of this week's artwork. To check that out, you can follow us on Facebook or Twitter at LD Taxonomy, or visit us at our home on the web at ldtaxonomy.com. And a very special thank you to our patrons, to Tristan Taylor, Jesse Raspolich, Kel Raspolich, Paul Chomo, and Richard Kaspar. Thank you so much for your support. It's greatly appreciated. Thanks for helping us keep the lights on.
And today we're talking about an animal whose official name violates the order force rule of grammar, and I hate that, but more on that later.
I know what you're talking about, but this is something I feel is often violated.
It shouldn't be. Sounds wrong.
Yeah, it does. It does sound off. But anyway, why don't you go ahead and rip off that Band-Aid? What are we talking about?
We're talking about
rip off that pink large Band-Aid.
We're talking about the Chinese giant salamander. My Greek fat big wedding.
Did you hear what I did with the Band-Aid thing? I was being clever. The pink large Band-Aid.
Oh yeah, the pink large Band-Aid.
It's like no.
Yeah, so the order of force rule is the order of adjectives before a noun. So like my big fat Greek wedding. And if you speak English natively, you probably know innately a lot of the rules without knowing the rules. So everyone is like, yeah, why does my fat Greek big wedding sound wrong? Because it is wrong. There's a rule that adjectives have to come in a specific order. And origin, like Chinese, is usually very close to the noun. And giant, which is size, is first or second, something like that. So it should be the giant Chinese salamander, but it's the Chinese giant salamander.
I think I think the general rule that people tend to adhere to, which ends up working, is general to specific. Chinese is very specific. Giant is just its size. It's more general. There are giant things can be anywhere. Chinese things are in one place. So, and just like big is very general, fat is much more specific, and then Greek is very specific. So that's why that goes in that order.
Well, that's a helpful general rule. But the order is opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, and purpose.
Yeah, it took me forever to remember kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. There's no way I'm remembering what you just said.
Well, you don't need most native English speakers don't even need to know the rule, and they'll get it right almost every time.
And I think if you follow the broad to specific thing, you'll do just fine.
I remember we used to work with a guy from Russia, and he asked us one time, how do you know what the order adjectives are supposed to go in is? And we were all like, I have no idea. And we just know. We just know it. We don't know why we know it.
It's funny whenever you try to explain English to someone who doesn't speak it fluently, you realize how much you just naturally understand or intuit without really knowing. Like I remember having at one point someone asked me what sure meant. And I was like, you know what? I'm not sure. I mean, I know positive. I'm very sure. But then what does positive mean? Like what like how do you explain that to someone who doesn't like the concept of not just like being secure or positive about something, but like also affirmative. It means, you want to go grab a bite to eat, sure. All this stuff. Anyway, we should cut all this out. This is all not relevant to the
grammar talk.
The giant Chinese salamander.
Well, let's bring it back to the salamander. The reason I think it's Chinese giant salamander is because there's more than one giant salamander. One of them is in Japan, one of them is in China. So I think it's like, oh, it's the giant salamander. Which one? Is it the one from Japan or is it the one from China? Oh, it's the Chinese giant salamander.
This would all be fixed if we just went back to saying of things. So it's the giant salamander of China, the giant salamander of Japan. Yeah. Like how Spanish does things.
Romantic languages.
We got a little romance in our English. I don't even speak my English unless it's got a little bit of romance in it.
Do you want to have names for this thing?
Yeah.
Besides the horrible one that violates grammar rules?
It's also known as the baby fish, which is, in my opinion, more wrong than Chinese giant salamander.
It's not small, cute, or a fish.
Right. I don't know if you're going to talk about it later. Why it's called that. Are you going to?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Well, apparently as in their infant stages, they make this squealing sound that in China, in Chinese, they have translated this to mean infant fish because it reminds them of the sound of a baby.
So it's not a baby fish; it's a baby fish.
Right. So they like just the way that the sounds that it makes sounds like a baby. So it's also not a fish.
Right.
But
right. Yeah. Not a fish at all.
This salamander has been around for a very long time, and the Chinese language has not changed a ton in thousands of years, which is pretty unique for a language. So, the things that they called it back then tend to, translate over or stick around. And also, Chinese is an interesting language when it comes to just taking words and jamming them together and having them mean entirely new concepts. Like, what's a blizzard? It's violent snow wind. What's a computer? It's electric brain.
Do you know what America is?
It's beautiful country.
Yeah.
And China is middle country. And England is English country. I had to know all that stuff when I was there. Anyway, so yes, it's called the baby fish. We're going to call it here the aquatic apex amphibian, the see no evil, heal no evil, breathe no evil, and Dr. Good and Slimy.
Cool.
Yep.
Good.
The doctor is in. It's a good doctor.
Would you like to know what kingdom it is in?
I can hazard a guess.
Go ahead.
Animalia.
That's correct.
That's all I can think. Yes. I didn't. Nursing school victory.
It's a kingdom you know, love, and are in. The kingdom Animalia. It's in the phylum Chordata. It's in the class Amphibia. It's in the order Urodela. Urodela. That's Salabandes.
Salabandes.
The family is Cryptobranchidae.
It's a long word, but was a lot easier
aquatic
to...
salamanders, commonly known as the giant salamanders.
Uh-huh.
And the genus is Andreas.
Andreas?
San Andreas. And the
Saint Andrew?
species is Davinanus? David? Ianus.
Davidianus?
Yeah, branch Davidianus.
Yeah, it's a branch Davidianus.
And Andreas Davidianus.
So it's Andrew David.
That's just his first and middle name.
It's just,
Andrew David Salamander.
If there was ever like an aristocratic wealthy salamander, that's definitely his name. All right, well, yeah. Since we're in the business of naming things, it's time for my favorite part of the show, critter groups. The part of the show where I ask you, Joe, a question. That question is the same every time. What is the name of a group of this animal, or what is the term of veterinary, or what is the collective noun? It all means the same thing. If you saw a group of salamanders, I don't think we've done a salamander yet. We've done geckos, we've done lots of lizards, but I don't think we've done, lots of frogs. I don't think we've done a salamander yet. So if you saw a group of salamanders, would you say it's A, a pittance of salamanders, B, a maelstrom of salamanders, C, a gouging of salamanders, or D, a simmer of salamanders? Pittance, maelstrom, gouging, and simmer.
Well, it's critically endangered, so there is just a pittance of them left. Why not? A pittance of salamanders. Final answer.
Incorrect. The answer is maelstrom. For no reason. Absolutely.
Is it like a yokai of the storm or something? Maybe that's
not in China.
The Japanese one.
Yeah, they don't. They don't. I guess, and it's not just this. It's salamanders. Like maybe this I would call a maelstrom, but all salamanders, most of them are tiny little lizard things. I would not call any of them a maelstrom. I would a lot sooner call like a giant squid a maelstrom, or a whale. A maelstrom of whales makes a lot more sense to me. But whatever. That's a pretty cool term of veterinary, given to a pretty cool animal.
Yeah. Speaking of that, would you like to know what it looks like?
Yeah.
It looks like the stuff, the like the lizard things that you fight in Elden Ring a couple times. Only it's not covered in stardust or lava. So,
what?
The salamander has a large head, small eyes, and wrinkled dark skin. It has a broad, flat head with a wide mouth and round, lidless eyes, as well as a line of paired tubercles circling its head and throat.
I love me some good tubercles.
They come in several colors, including dark brown, reddish brown, black, brownish tones, and with a mottled speckled pattern. Candy apple red is not available. And
insurance is higher on those.
Yeah, that's true. There have been reports of albinos, which are white or orange in color. That'd be fun.
Orange is not what I would have expected for an albino.
I would think like if you were trying to print some brown and you ran out of ink, you would come out orange.
I think you just come out with tan, beige.
Yeah. Well, maybe you have a lot of reds and not a lot of blues.
That's true.
Okay. Well, that brings us to its relative size. It's called giant. How giant is it? Welcome to the Beloved Measure Up segment, the official listener's favorite part of the show, the part of the show that's introduced by you. When you send an audio of yourself singing or cheering the words to measure up into ldtaxonomy.com, it's also the part of the show when we present the animal size and dimensions in relatable terms through a quiz that's fun for the whole family. we do have a Measure Up intro anew from Melissa, who has the team on her back for the last 3 weeks. And now this is the 4th week.
Go, Melissa.
And it's the last of the boon she's bestowed upon us. So,
and it's been a delightful reign of
terror.
of fan
A fan.
of the Reign of Fan. That's my second favorite Sean Connery movie. There's Reign of Fire and then Reign of Fan.
But if you were waiting to maybe send in a Measure Up when we really needed it, next week we will have none if it's not for you. That's right. You, John, you need to send in one next week.
I bet you
There must be a John.
Freaked a John out right now.
But based on the people that have, of their own volition, sent us in Measure Ups, it's probably more like a Kim or a Joan, you know?
Joan. Interesting.
Meaning, it seems like the ladies are the ones that are stepping up in this regard. So we gotta appeal to the boys. The boys gotta send in their Measure Ups. You gotta pull your weight around here.
Come on, John.
Yeah. Okay. Without further ado, the listener's favorite part of the show.
Give me those digits.
What? She needs the digits.
Oh my gosh. I was not prepared for that. I was prepared for my favorite fan and to hear that in the background. But I was not prepared for the digits.
The digits are requested. The numbers.
Can I have
the numbers, Mason? Can we get them?
Can we get the numbers?
That's a good one. I like that. Digits. The numbers. We're talking numbers. Ready?
Sure, yeah. Derail.
Are you... What?
Remember? Did you ever... I think, what, that SNL skit where it's like, can I have your number? Can I have it? Can I have the 10 digits that make up your number? My name is Derail. Yes. It's like spelled Daryl, but pronounced Derail.
So let's... Speaking of digits and numbers... You've got 5 more of those things in terms of percentage that's going towards both of these Measure Up questions because Melissa has deigned to send us this Measure Up intro. So thank you, Melissa, for this 4th above and beyond Measure Up's introduction. Let's talk about length. They're between 1.15 meters and 3.8 feet. How many Chinese giant salamanders go into the length of the Long March, the longest recorded march in military history?
Is that under Napoleon?
I'll give you a 1 more percent, so a total of 6%. If you can guess what country the Long March took place in. Or what country was involved.
I guess I'm going to go with my previous guess in that it was France.
Final guess?
Sure, yeah.
That percentage has gone down the drain.
Darn it.
Here's a hint. The Long March was a military retreat of the First Red Army, the vanguard of the Chinese Communist Party in the 1930s.
I should have guessed that it had something to do with China. I don't know why I forgot that these are sometimes related.
Yeah.
I should have just said China. I would have probably been right.
It's a good guess to just go with whatever the animal's from. The march took a full year from October 1934 to October 1935. Actually, over a year by a few days. And it started in Yudu in the province of Jiangxi. to Yan'an in Shanxi. Shanxi. X's or Z sounds right. The retreat was forced under pressure from the national forces of the Kuomintang, which are the I think 3rd and 4th Red Armies.
1,000 miles. Done. This is easy.
They would walk 1,000 miles just to not see.
Just to be the army that walked 1,000 miles to fall down at your door.
Kuomintang, battle with Kuomintang.
At your Kuomintang. Yeah, so 3.8 feet. They can get up to be 6 feet long, though. That's a very large salamander, but average is not there.
Yeah, we're going to go with 3.8.
Yes, 1.4 million salamanders.
Final answer?
Yeah.
The correct answer is 7.7 million.
That is a long way to go.
The march was 9,000 kilometers or 5,600 miles.
Goodness gracious.
Historians are at odds as to whether this was caused by military brilliance or a cavalcade of military blunders. But either way, it is definitely a feat of human kind to walk an army that long.
I'm trying to see what the width of the United States is. So it's 2,900 miles to get from New York to San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
They did that almost twice. They walked from New York to San Francisco and back. That is bananas.
Let's talk about weight. They're between 25 and 30 kilograms or 55 to 66 pounds. Pretty big for a salamander.
Up to 110.
Mm-hmm. How many salamanders go into the weight of a fully loaded Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, the heaviest single-engine plane in World War II?
How does this relate to China?
Because I was doing research about the Long March and started thinking about 1930s and 40s aircraft. Because during the Long March, they were dodging reconnaissance planes. But here's a hint. This is not a Chinese fighter. This fighter was produced by the United States company Republic Aviation. It was capable of carrying 2,500 pounds of payload. And we're talking fully loaded here. This is a nacho with cheese.
And jalapenos.
Mm-hmm.
And onions.
And beef.
And
sour cream.
Sour cream, yeah. And pineapple salsa.
No.
Yeah. I'm addicted to pineapple salsa now. I can't go back to regular stuff.
I like a mango salsa with just a chip dipped into it, but not with all of that other savory goodness.
All the trappings. And I can't explain it. I don't know why I like it, because usually I don't like including fruit into savory things, but this works.
Do you like a pineapple on a pizza?
I won't turn it down, but I'd prefer if it didn't have a pineapple
Same.
on it.
I feel like you have to choose one side or the other. Like you're either like disgusted and offended by
you're either personally offended by the concept of it, or
you want to wolf it down at light speed every single time.
Or it's the only pizza you like.
Yeah, no,
I'm about as indifferent as I can be.
Yeah.
When it comes to pizza. It's like, do you want like crushed like black pepper on your pizza? It's like, sure, I guess.
I'd rather have a pineapple than an olive on a pizza. I'll flip an olive across the room.
And then walk over there and step on it so that it gets like mashed into the carpet because I don't want that on my pizza. I want it in the carpet.
And then quickly clean it up so that my wife doesn't get upset. Because I'm not an animal. I'm just flicking toppings. Not a crazed lunatic.
Speaking of animals,
66 pounds going into a fighter carrying 2,500 pounds of payload.
151.
Final answer.
Yes. 151 salamanders.
The correct answer was 242 salamanders.
That is not a nursing school victory, even with my percentage.
The Thunderbolt was 1,600 pounds for 8 tons. Or 8 tons.
16,000 pounds.
16,000 pounds or 8 tons when it was fully loaded, making it the heaviest aircraft, single-engine aircraft in World War II. Which I said.
And then they're like, man, we should probably put another engine on this if we want to go any heavier.
But it commanded the skies in its era. It was the killer bee for sure.
Man, we just recently went to the Air Armament Museum in the Panhandle, and being a dogfighter in World War II must have been so nerve-wracking. My gosh. Just considering how easy it is to take those things out of the sky, and you're just in this hunk of metal that just there is no way this ends well for you if you get hit. So
well, the Thunderbolt had an armored cockpit.
Yeah, that doesn't do that much when your engine gets hit with a flak cannon. Yeah,
caliber bullets.
A Caller. And then, yeah, now you're in an armored cockpit that's headed for the ground. So, I doff my cap to people who fly planes for war, because that is terrifying. Anyway.
Well, there you go, Melissa. Those are the digits. And we're sorry your percentage bonus wasn't given to a victory. In this case.
And it wasn't the best, because I wasn't like super off, but I was way off.
Not nursing school material. So let's talk fast facts before we get into the major fact. The Chinese giant salamander is a fully aquatic and nocturnal creature that lives in mountain streams in the Yangtze River Basin. Big mountain man, right in the center of right of center.
Rubio, right of center.
Yeah.
There you go.
He's a Rubio. It's
and Rubio is a classic mountain man.
It's critically endangered because of habitat loss and over collection. Guess one of the things that has made it critically endangered. It's an animal. It's endangered. It's in China.
Chinese superstitious traditional healing medicines.
100% correct. It is a delicacy and is used in traditional Chinese medicine. The 1-2 punch for an animal in China
is for the people there to think that they get some sort of spiritual benefit from eating you.
Insects, millipedes, horsehair worms, amphibians, frogs and salamanders, freshwater crabs, shrimp, fish, Asiatic water shrew. These are a few of my favorite things, and they're the things that this animal likes to eat.
The Asiatic water shrew, for sure.
Doesn't it just like send a shiver down your spine when a amphibian eats a mammal?
like that was it the Welsh catfish or whatever that was? That eats mammals.
Yeah.
And we talked about whether or not it eats humans.
It's not allowed. If you're a frog, if you're a salamander, if you're a fish, you aren't permitted to eat something with fur.
Or like a tarantula bird, or
Eating a bird. It's the
the
same
bird
feeling.
eating
as
Goliath tarantula.
an insect eating a bird. Yes.
Yeah,
100%.
No, you're punching above your weight class there,
Yeah.
and it's horrifying.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if you got to do it, do it. But I don't like to see it. You don't like to see it.
But this would be
Speaking
like
of-
if the giant like the tarantula versus bird thing would be like if this giant salamander like ate a Rottweiler. Okay. No.
But speaking of things that you really shouldn't be eating, it also likes to eat other of its own species. Quite a lot. Don't you know you're endangered? Cut that out.
I don't think he knows. I don't think
they
anyone's
can't-
told it.
Oh, is it because they can't see very well, so they're not looking at the charts?
Yeah, they haven't seen their digits.
So yeah, they can't see well. But giant salamanders don't like the heat and will get out of the kitchen die in temperatures of 95 degrees or higher.
Same.
I don't know the Celsius for that, but we don't do that here.
I think it's like 40.
Yeah,
High 30s.
It's something right in the middle. Something like, Celsius is good for nothing, except for
cooking. Very, very easily being able to know where freezing and boiling is.
Yeah, so Celsius for cooking, Kelvin for science, and Fahrenheit for weather temperature.
For daily life.
Yeah, because it means something when the temperature goes up by 1. And you know what it means. You feel it.
If the temperature goes up by 1 Celsius, you're definitely going to feel it.
Well, yeah, but like you can fine tune with Fahrenheit.
Yeah, so I guess like if you have a thermostat that only does in Celsius, like it's just that is so this swings wildly. It's like I want it to be, 25 degrees Celsius, and then I bump it up to 26, I'm going to die of a heat stroke. Or if I bump it down to 24, everyone's going to freeze to death.
Yeah.
So it's, goodness gracious.
We all have our purposes. We don't have to pretend like Celsius makes sense for the weather. You can do the Fahrenheit, English people. We won't tell anyone.
Rest of the world?
Yeah. Rest of the world. We won't tell England. Rest of the world. Come over to the Fahrenheit land. Females lay around 500 eggs, which are guarded by the male until the eggs hatch. They have several courtship displays, including a belly bump. So if you watch a football game with a Chinese giant salamander and your team scores a touchdown, refrain from the old chest bump, or they'll get ideas.
You don't want to be sending mixed signals to a Chinese giant salamander.
You don't want to be leading them on. That's just rude.
Yeah.
Young salamanders have gills until they reach 3 years old. They reach maturity around 5 years old. And they live for about 60 years. Undocumented claims, kind of like lies, say that salamanders have reached 200 years old. But they are not credible and are not considered credible sources.
That is an old salamander, regardless.
Mm-hmm.
They look old, though. They look like they've been around for a long time. They're like the Greenland shark. They just look weathered.
They do, yeah. That's all I got for that.
All right, you ready for the major fact?
I sure am.
All right. Well, we were talking about it before the episode started that I had an animal encounter story to tell, and this was weeks ago, and I forgot to include it in any of the episodes, so I'm going to put it in here because you were there for it.
I was there for it.
So
I was there for that.
3 weeks ago, you came to my house, and we went with everybody and the kids to the zoo. So we were there looking at all the animals that we've covered, like the cassowary and the rhinos and the elephants.
Mhm.
And we were over near the Zabu land. We're over near where the lemurs and everything are.
Where the little leaping lemurs like to bounce and play.
Yeah, they actually do have the thing that Zabumafu is. It is technically a lemur, but it's not called a lemur. It starts with an S. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, we were right there, and a little baby squirrel comes out from underneath a nearby bush and walks up to my shoe and then climbs on top of my shoe. And I had my son, I was like, I was standing over him. And my son was like in between my feet, and he punts this baby squirrel like a foot or so, just like, get away from me kind of thing.
He reacted like everyone else should when a rodent approaches you. But
squirrels are
babies.
squirrels are so cute, and baby squirrels are just the cutest.
But he said, no one's competing with me this day in terms of cuteness.
He's like, this might have rabies. But anyway, so the squirrel was not injured because a 2-year-old kicked it. But anyway, it climbed back up up on my shoe, and it started to climb up my leg. And so, like, I put it on my hand, and I picked it up, and it was this baby squirrel was just on my arm. And I'm thinking, like, oh, it's a squirrel. Like, climbing is its thing. These things, like, run upside down on trees and stuff like that. It should be fine. And it was like, it didn't seem super steady on my arm. And then at one point it just jumped off. I mean, I'm like 5'11"-ish, 5'11" and a half or so. So it just jumped off my arm and splatted on the ground. And
your arm was like maybe around 4 feet off the
ground.
ground.
I was just holding it out. And it just did a belly flop on the ground.
Oh yeah, and like a typical squirrel, like could fall from like 20 feet and like probably be fine. But
yeah, this one
really belly flopped.
But I read about it, and they actually do this. Like this is something that squirrels do, which is belly flop on the ground. I don't know if it's supposed to, if the thing that they're trying to get away from is supposed to be like, oh, I guess it's dead, I'm gonna walk away. But I don't know. This is not abnormal behavior for a squirrel. But we were just like, oh my gosh, this thing is just like maimed itself. They picked it back up, and it seemed to be in shock, and it curled up, but eventually it just kind of shrugged it off and seemed fine. And then we went to our walk down the path with it and found a zoo employee, because Bibby was like, if we can't let it go, it doesn't have its mom, it's going to die. So I was like, all right, I'll give it to a zoo employee instead of chucking it in the flamingo den or whatever. And it took a while so they called in like the animal control person, which I feel like every zoo employee should be an animal control person, but there's apparently very specific people for non-zoo animals, like, zoo animals.
Some of those zoo employees, like the person that first approached us was later like serving us burgers. So like there's a range of skills.
You're gonna have to be like a Jack or a Jane of all trades, you know. Mm-hmm. I don't know if Jane of all trades is the thing, but let's make it a thing.
You know what? It's 2022. We can have Janes of all things.
Janes of all of all trades.
And masters of none, but better than a master of one.
Mistresses of none, because mistress is the so anyway, so I'm holding this baby squirrel, and it falls asleep in my hands, and we're just standing there in the path and waiting for the specific employee that deals with animals at a zoo to show up, and then suddenly a bunch of like teenagers notice that I have a baby squirrel in my hand. And then they all start like gathering around me. There's like 20 people around me taking pictures. And the zoo employees are just standing there like, yeah, you're going to be Instagram famous.
I know. There's lions like 20 feet away from you.
I know. There's literally like 50 bright pink flamingos across the way from me. I'm not joking about the whole flamingo thing. That's much more interesting than a squirrel. Everybody knows what squirrels look like. But yeah, and then eventually the person came and I dropped the squirrel off and washed my stinking hands, and then it rained for the rest of the day. But that's my animal encounter outside of all the zoo animals that were there.
It was nibbling on you a little bit.
Oh yeah, it did not break the skin, but it was nipping. I think it was looking for food or something, or milk or whatever. I didn't have any of that. So it was very cute, and the first time I've ever picked up a squirrel before, or ever had a squirrel. That was probably the first time I've ever actually touched a squirrel, a living squirrel.
That was a situation where it's like, what's the right thing to do here, or what's the good thing to do? Because like you don't want to. You normally don't. If you said, "Hey, should you touch a rodent?" You should probably say no.
No.
But this one particularly seemed like it was in trouble.
But yeah, it's like, do I put this back in the bush that it came out from and just be like, and then it just runs back out and somebody steps on it? Do I chuck it in the flamingo pen? Do I? What do I do? Monkey? If I put it down, Base is just gonna kick it again. So, do I give it to one of the monkeys? I think I made the right call though.
Giving it to another person.
Giving it to a person,
another human being
that claimed to know what they were doing. But yeah, everyone was enthralled by the sight of a squirrel in a zoo.
You paid money in here to see animals that you don't see every day.
So take a picture of the squirrel. Anyway, that's my animal encounter. Glad you were there for it, because nothing interesting happens. That's the most interesting that's ever happened to me at any zoo. So let's talk about the major facts for the salamander, and I'm calling this skin deep. So despite being so big and normally the apex predator of its environment, the giant salamander needs to have some interesting adaptations to survive, namely in its skin. So for starters, there's three major things that the salamander's skin does. Whenever they are threatened or injured, the first thing is that they secrete a white, slimy mucus that is rich in proteins and very viscous, sticky. And this allows them to, if something is going to potentially cut them, it reduces that. And also, if they have been injured or cut or something like that, it seals and heals. Let's seal and heal. How is that not a mantra? Like at some sort of pseudo spiritual getaway or something like that. Let's seal and heal.
Don't let them know. But now they know.
So yeah, it functions as a medical adhesive. This slime, and it has been actually proven to work in pigs and rats. To heal wounds. It has a low risk of infection, and it actually reduces scarring at the end. And researchers have even made a bioadhesive out of the salamander's skin goo, called SSAD. I don't know, super seasonal affective disorder. But it's basically just the goo. It's the goo, but it's freeze dried. And the plan is to develop it so that it can be used for sutureless wound closures on humans in the future, possibly even used during surgeries on internal organ wounds. So sometimes in surgeries, a lot of times in emergency surgeries, internal organs are damaged, but also during regular surgeries, internal organs can be nicked or something like that. And this might be a very good thing to put on that. It's like the aloe vera of animal secretions. So the Chinese have actually been using the salamander gunk to treat burns for over 1,500 years. So if you Yes, you. If you are injured in China and a giant salamander happens to be nearby, consider yourself lucky because there aren't very many of them. But also, just slap some of that skin slime on and you should be right as rain. So that's the first thing that it does, is it secretes the very, very good slime. The second thing is that this like you said, they can't see very well. They have these beady little eyes that are lidless, but yet they don't really rely on them. Their eyesight is very poor. So to compensate for that, their skin is lined with these special sensory nodes. And so it will depend on these sensory nodes to sense vibrations in the water that's around it, and that'll allow them to detect prey by triangulating those vibrations. It'll also allow it to detect like other things that are nearby and potential threats. And so yeah, it doesn't look for its prey. It senses its prey using its skin. So it sees with its skin, basically. And then lastly, just like frogs can drink through their skin, giant salamanders have semi-permeable skin that allows oxygen to be absorbed from the water. So they actually just they live their whole lives underwater. And like you said, as adolescents they have gills, but as adults they don't have gills. They have lungs. But rather than floating up to the surface to grab a gulp of delicious air, they just sit at the bottom of the river and absorb oxygen via osmosis. Just like I said, like amphibians or like frogs can just drink by sitting in a puddle. So yeah, the giant salamander just sits at the bottom of a river and it uses its skin to breathe, to see, and to heal itself. Pretty cool, in my opinion. I think we did the axolotl, and that is technically related to salamanders. It's probably the closest thing we've done to a salamander, and that thing can like regrow its head. So they're very good at healing. But yeah, that's all I got.
That's all I got.
All right, so that was the Chinese very big, giant, large Chinese salamander. For you out there in Podcastia, keep your skin slimy, blend in with your background, and absorb what you need via osmosis, like the Chinese giant salamander here in Life, Death, and Taxonomy.
Hey Taxonomy Titans, I just want to remind you that we now have a Patreon. Patrons can see full video episodes and get shoutouts on the show. But ultimately, it's a way for you to help us cover some costs and get even better. Still, reviews are the best way to help us grow. So if you haven't left one yet, we'd really love to hear from you. As always, thanks for listening and engaging.
Life, Death, and Taxonomy is my favorite in the world podcast.
Disgusting. Bibby and I quote that all the time to each other. Is from Spirited Away.